Beyond the Wrench with Jay Goninen from WrenchWay.
Welcome to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. On this week's episode, we had the pleasure of being joined by Carolyn Coquillette, who is the founder and CEO of Shop-Ware, as well as the 2022 ASCCA president down in California. It's a really fun conversation and one where we talk about the importance of associations and making sure that you've got a team of people that are really working in your favor. And regardless of what type of shop you are, I think it's really important that you are a part of an association. And really, I think the cool part about this episode is diving into what that means. You know, what does an association do for you? And Carolyn breaks down what her priorities as this year's president are, what her plan of attack is, and just in general, how important it is for industry professionals to get involved with associations. So this episode is brought to us by Diesel Laptops. Diesel Laptops is your shop efficiency solution company. They do this through diagnostic tools, diesel technician training, repair information, parts lookup tools, and a call center staff with diesel technicians. Diesel Laptops is committed to working with you to find the right solution for your company that fits your needs and your budget. The folks over at Diesel Laptops are just really good people and are doing some really big things over there. So I'd encourage you to go check them out. Now I'll get out of the way and let you enjoy the episode. Have a great week. One of my favorite people in the industry, Carolyn Coquillette from Shop-Ware. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
Tell us a little bit about this backdrop behind you.
Well, I'm in San Francisco. This is the beautiful city of San Francisco, and we've got downtown. You can always know it by Salesforce Tower right here.
Yeah.
So enjoying a little morningscape with my buddy on Midwest time. So nice to be able to share a little bit of the beauty of the West Coast when it happens.
Well, I'm excited. We're just venturing into spring here in Wisconsin. Yep. I'm sure we'll have inevitably
plants are blooming, and you're just like, oh God.
Yeah. There's something that's green there. I haven't seen that in months.
Yeah. So I was born and raised Cleveland, lived in Michigan, so I've totally been there. Yeah. That dandelion, or not dandelion, daffodil. Yeah. That daffodil bloom. I mean, it is
game changer.
It's a tearjerker for sure.
We inevitably will get just to test your will. It'll get nice for like 2 weeks, and then just a downpour of snow.
One more.
Some point. Yeah.
One more April 3rd. Yeah.
I think that's
kill all of the annuals that you planted lovingly.
That's what makes the Midwest people tough, is that you just you get tested constantly. So exciting conversation today. One where you're heavily involved now with the ASCCA, if I can say that. It's a tough acronym to say, but
it is a long one. It's a longer one.
So what is the ASCCA?
So Automotive Service Councils of California, that's the last CA, is California's acronym, is a 5-letter acronym. And that's because California is, awesome. We get the biggest acronym in the business. We take up a lot of space. The good news is that ASCCA, despite having many letters, has a tremendous relationship with Sacramento. And we advocate on behalf of service professionals in Sacramento to make sure that our interests are heard. And that has been going on since 1940. Wow. It is literally a 82 this year, old organization. And I'm proud to be able to participate as its president this year. It's an amazing organization, some really dedicated volunteers, and it's all about how do we continue to succeed in business, in the great state of California. But honestly, what happens in California ultimately happens to the whole country, and so we're happy to be tip of the spear.
Yeah, it definitely does. Now, how has it been in getting involved maybe on the political side, right? Like, I think getting into Sacramento, I think that has a whole different set of challenges now.
Right. So we have So there's a couple things. So first is the Bureau of Automotive, excuse me, the Bureau of Automotive Repair, BAR, is notorious, which is the regulatory body, part of the Consumer Affairs Division in, California. And that's sort of the regulatory structure. So Consumer Affairs is one of the departments, and the Bureau of Automotive Repair is part of it. And part of the Bureau of Automotive Repair's responsibilities is to administer the smog program. So all the emissions testing, which again began in California before even there was emissions testing nationwide. And it's a moneymaker for California, which there's not a lot of regulatory activities that are moneymakers. So we joke that it's never going away. They're never gonna clip this off. So we will be testing tailpipes as long as there are tailpipes. I mean, they'll figure out a way to test Teslas somehow, because it makes money for the great state. Anyway, Bureau of Automotive Repair has, they've had the same. Pat DeRay has been the bureau chief there for as long as I've known it. So that's got to be 7 or 8 years. I mean, they've been involved. He's been involved for a really long time. They probably have a new bureau chief. I mean, I'm kind of talking in front of myself here, but maybe every 10 years. It's a regulatory thing, right? So you're the bureau chief, and then you move on to something else, and you move on to something else, and then eventually you're Gavin Newsom, and you're aiming to be the president of the United States. So Pat DeRay is currently a younger man, currently manning Bureau of Automotive Repair. We'll see how long he lasts, but we have presence on that regulatory body. They have a panel. They have workshops. We participate in that both as a named member of ASCCA, and then we also have a paid lobbyist, Jack Molodonov, who represents us on the Bureau activities. And then there are also activities that happen on the state legislation level, which are different bills that are brought at the state Senate / voting entity that are considering laws that will ultimately impact repair professionals. And this guy is incredible. Like we're paying him, but obviously, we're paying him, but he is above and beyond whatever he's being paid. I mean, this guy is just a total shark around what it is that may be of interest to the association, and where we might need to get involved, like where do we need to rally our membership and have them reach out to state senators or show up for legislative day and represent small business owners to folks in SAC. There's images of the farmers or different types of advocacy groups that show up in Sacramento, and they have their tractors, and they're really trying to provide visibility for people's interests. That's what ASCCA is ultimately doing. So it's not just our lobbyists and the fact that we're maintaining a relationship with folks that happen to be there all year round, but we're able to rally people to show up at just the right time to make sure that our interests are heard. And that's our motto. So, ASCCA's core purpose is to unite automotive service professionals and give them voice. And the voice component is particular in Sacramento. In a state like California, that is absolutely essential. And honestly, when you talk about all of the different things that are happening inside of automotive repair these days, having someone in your corner around big things like Sacramento, like California, like potentially setting a precedent nationwide and making sure that we're not, off the table, it's pretty important.
Yeah. And how hard is it to get a collective voice between the shops, right? And when I say that,
impossible. Yeah. Independent shop owners. Yeah. It's terrible. Right? We're hurting cats.
And not only that, like in California, right? You've got probably a different type of shop owner in Los Angeles than you do Lake Tahoe, right? Like you know what I'm saying? Like just kind of different backgrounds, maybe different opinions.
Yeah. So how it works is we have different chapters. Currently, there are 16 different chapters. Some of those, we could have more chapters. We've had more chapters in the past. This gets a little bit sort of like, down deep into the details around how the association business is run. But there are different localized activities that allow people to band together, meet people who are in their same region, and talk about what's going on for them, particularly whether it's a local regulator, business climate, whatever, like in San Francisco, obviously, they basically don't want you to do business. So, how do you fight to make a dollar? Not just give it all to the state is very prescient. So, there's different issues that are affecting different shop owners, and you can do that on the chapter level. However, when you get to the state level, it's more obtuse. Like it's not that hard to be able to come together and say, look, don't pass this law that requires, for example, more recently, there was a law that we've actually passed, or we've supported and has passed, but that it has to do with inspections and some what do I want to say? Not comeuppance, accountability for shops that are not following the rules. And how do those shops ultimately get held to account? And where does their information get published? What's the vetting process for making sure that they can absolve themselves or whatever? And we wanted to make sure that it wasn't overly punitive and, was fair. On the other hand, we thought, ultimately, if there are people who are not following the rules and are ne'er-do-wells, they should be potentially punished. They should be aired out in a public venue to be able to say that this group didn't really do what was in the consumer's best interest. So we were working with them very closely to make sure that while we don't expect any of our members to potentially be part of that list, if someone does, they still have a path to be able to maintain their businesses and not be sort of given the mark of ham. So that kind of thing is it's not as detailed as you might imagine on
Sure.
kind of a regulatory level. It's just really, how do you treat auto repair professionals? Now, Sacramento is not strategic, right? They're completely reactionary. There'll be something in the news, which happened, in this particular case, I think it was like 3 years ago, some thing came out and it was on the evening news, and some shop owner, some particular shop didn't behave very well. And so finally they're rolling out this regulation that's going to keep that shop from ever doing that again. And so we're managing expectations and making sure that the regulators feel like they can say they did their job and responded to whatever was the case du jour, but it's not going to disrupt us and make sure that we continue taking care of customers in the long term. So, some of these rules and regulations are kind of frustrating in the sense that do you really need this? This is the best use of your time. But, we're not trying to solve the problems in Sacramento globally. We're just making sure that shop owners are able to do their business. And so it's actually pretty tremendous. I am so amazed constantly at what level of talent and insight and just, frankly, professionalism we bring at Sacramento. And this is the kind of stuff where we talk about, why should you participate in an association? People don't get it. I mean, they think it's literally about like, a uniform discount or, whether I get a newsletter in a month. It's not about that at all. And
Right.
so what we have done most recently is rolled out an introductory membership, which I'm excited to talk to you about, that allows people to join free of charge, no questions asked, fill out the form, your name's on the list. And I am so passionate about that. I mean, I'm literally like, if you care about your business, you should put your name on the list.
Yeah.
I don't need to talk to you about whether you need a uniform discount. You need to have your business, your body needs to be counted in Sacramento when we're making these types of cases. And ultimately, you should feel very confident that your interests are represented and that it will be professionally managed. And all we need is more representation, more visibility.
I think that was a misconception I had when I was younger, right? Like it was joining an association was mostly, signing up so you could get the sticker on your door or, something like that.
There's so many letters you can't fit it on your door. Right?
Yeah, it actually has to become the sign.
We take over.
But there is so much benefit in that side of it, and it's such a when you get into the political side of it, I think it opens the door to make it feel like your voice is heard, right? And I think that is so important for a shop to be able to do that instead of just sitting on their hands and saying, "Oh, this damn industry's keeping me down." Okay, if that's the case, then step up, like go
Right.
participate. There's events, there's things that you can be a part of to be more active and not just bitch about things, but
Well,
actually do
this gets
things.
back to what WrenchWay is doing. I mean, how are you feeling about shop owner engagement these days?
In terms of like just engaged in their day-to-day business or engaged with vendor relationships.
I everywhere I go, I hear about WrenchWay. I mean, everyone's sort of realizing that this is a good idea. But I'm curious, like in terms of people seeing the big picture.
It's hard, right? I think,
So
and
talk
it's,
about that.
I get it, right? Because when you're trying to put fires out, and it's totally the mentality of trying to get people to work on their business rather than in their business. And it's not natural for a lot of people because maybe they were a technician in the shop that was so focused on, okay, I got to get this car out. I got to fix this one thing, that they're missing kind of the broad scope of the entire business and making their lives easier as a result. And so I think that's where coaches have become really important and influential, is to get them to think and take the blinders off to say, okay, if I change this and I build process and I have something in place as a business, my life is ultimately going to be easier. The business is going to run better. But for a lot of shops, they haven't seen that side of it yet, right? They haven't seen the ability to do some of that stuff that makes their life easier and ultimately better, because they're not so desperate to put fires out. And like in our case, it's the technician side, right? And they get
Mm-hmm.
desperate and they run out and they're like, I need a tech and I don't have a tech, so I'm going to go work on the car myself. And then when they're working on the car themselves, they're not actually doing CEO type responsibilities,
Right.
and they put themselves further and further behind all the time as a result. So I think there's a lot of shops that are getting drastically better at that. There's still a lot of shops that we struggle with in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we certainly have to cut through that noise from the association level. I will say that, what ASCCA has been dealing with for the last, let's say, 20 years, and it's been a pretty bumpy ride, is not, and I haven't been there. I mean, I can't, I've been involved in the association since like 2014. So
Yeah.
what is that, 8 years or something? So I've done a lot of, anthropology to kind of go back and talk to the people who have been there through those different periods and understand, how did we arrive here? How is the association structured? What are kind of the core tenets? What are the movements that are kind of under the water that are ultimately creating the situation that we have today? And some of those things are phenomenal. I mean, like ASCCA, for example, Automotive Service Councils of California. What's a council? Is this chapter concept? Is this idea that people originally got together on a local basis and talked about what was affecting their businesses, and then they ultimately banded together and elected a board of directors at the state level, and then that group was responsible for representing folks in Sacramento and at this point managing some staff. So that's phenomenal. This is the mechanism, the agency that allowed us to have that kind of representation at Sacramento and in such a robust way. But it's still, a sum of its parts. It's still individual shops making up chapters that ultimately vote for a board of directors. It's not a top-down organization at all. So for better, for worse, you're still dealing with all of those individual egos and other competing interests. And do people show up and pay their dues and participate on committees and blah blah blah. So you have to still herd the cats. The opportunity with the introductory membership, which we're calling like a freemium membership or whatever, is this idea that there's no excuse for you to not participate in an association.
Yeah.
I love the phrase "stronger together." I mean, there is so much about being independent that makes us who we are. Like we have to be independent shop owners. I mean, I love to say, we're all arrogant. Only arrogants think they can, fix cars and make money doing it. So, that's the name of the game. You're going to have to be cut from that, extremely bold plaid before you even elect yourself for this kind of job. But then what are you dealing with on the other side, right? And so how do you bring people together, and how do you try to assimilate that consensus to make change? I've actually really enjoyed being a leader, participating on the leadership level for ASCCA, because it helps me see what shop owners are dealing with, and how also to deal with shop owners in a different way than I do from like a
Shop-Ware perspective.
Yeah, from a shop-ware perspective, and also just as a shop owner perspective, right? They're not my competition. And so it's been fascinating talking to people from a totally different seat, and removing the barriers, I think, is so important right now, because this industry, we're very proud of ourselves. We think we're fine. Realistically, we are completely underserved. And this is a drum that I beat constantly when we talk about shop management software and setting expectations. But realistically, we're taken for granted on so many levels, and certainly the consuming, the consumers, the driving public likes it that way. If they have this sort of barefoot and pregnant point of view around shop owners, then they don't have to pay anything. It's easy to say, oh, they're all crooks and they're Neanderthals and they're dragging their knuckles around. Well, then I can pay $75 an hour. Well, yeah. No, actually, we're actually very sophisticated in this building that you just in my case, this building that you just pulled your car into. I'm literally competing against Airbnb around the corner. I mean, I'm paying. I've been a little bit more outspoken about this recently, but I pay $21,000 a month for my 5-bay shop. And that's not even the most expensive part of my business, right? The most expensive part of my business is the people, because people have to themselves rent apartments and live here so they could drive a 4-hour distance to come to my shop and then physically touch cars. I mean, like, how do you afford being in business? And it's like, so my labor rate's currently $180 an hour.
And you're probably cheap there, right? I mean,
we're Prius.
Yeah.
I completely lambast the guys in my 20 group who are all doing Euro, because I'm like, shame. How am I charging $180 on Prius, the cheapest customers in the world? That's why they bought the Prius in the first place. Shame on you. Why are you charging $119? Get that labor rate up to $150. I don't care if you're in Cleveland. Put that at $150. Yeah, anyway, we talk about this endlessly. It's very expensive to run a business in San Francisco, and then ultimately, how do we figure out how we stay in business? How do we continue to feed our souls to be able to show up every day and do the hard work? I mean, ultimately, the reason why everyone's in business here is because we really deeply care. I mean, right. we're care bears. We love the cars. We love the people. We love doing something meaningful every day. I don't think that, honestly, Sacramento is out of touch with that. I don't think that regulators are adversarial in that regard. They just don't know who we are. Yeah. Anyway, so how do we pull people together and talk about it? Ultimately, we need to lower the barriers for people. They're very busy. We're competing for everyone's attention. Social media, the internet, it's all about the eyeballs, and that limitation of social capital and people's engagement on types of activities that are kind of more old-fashioned, like automotive service councils. I show up in my Model A to the meeting. Is the challenge. And so lowering that barrier and making it kind of like, in my opinion, again, like a little bit of shaming, which is, if you are a shop owner, you should have this, you should have this, and you should have this. You should have a contemporary scan tool. You should have a service subscription. And by the way, you should participate in an industry association. How does that industry association make itself as approachable as possible? That's the industry association's problem. So for us, it's lowering the barrier to entry in terms of cost, and then ultimately making those communications that we have with memberships a lot more substantive, so very clear and very high value. So, that's what we're working on. I do think that we're in really great shape, and every single one of the associations. I mean, you look at Milwaukee, we were just at Vision. We were talking about that before you started the recording.
Yeah.
I mean, what's going on the Auto Care Alliance level is really phenomenal. We're really excited to be able to work with Sherry and figure out how we can bring kind of California to bear with some of the other different states that are now forming a really, I think, considerable block to be able to represent ourselves on the national level. I mean, this is just one of the things that unfortunately we forget about when we're trying to fix a car in our bay. But you have to do it's right alongside with making sure your payroll is on time and your checks are cashed and all that stuff. Like, you need to participate on an association. You need to make sure your interests are considered on a state and ultimately national level. And it's been really fun for me. I mean, honestly, it's a break from sort of the shop and the software side of house, like having different kinds of organizational requirements and how do you manage those types of things. But also, I'm just deeply inspired, frankly. I mean, just really incredible people.
How much of it is, you're representing the best interest of the independent shop owners in California. How much of it is educating those shops? So, like, one thing that really stuck out to me with what you talked about, and I've heard this echoed throughout the country, is making sure that shops are getting their labor rates in order. Because, like, if we just, for so long it was a race to the bottom, who could be the cheapest, who could be the cheapest, and it damaged our industry, right? Because that doesn't allow you to offer good benefits or good pay.
Yeah, you can't pay your employees. You won't have employees.
No, and right now,
customers, but no employees.
Well, and that's what we're feeling right now, right? Like, if you can pay top of market for techs, I'm guessing you won't have nearly the issue to get techs. But it's really hard for shops to maybe grasp that. But to me, the foundational element to that is if your labor rates aren't in check, you're never going to be able to pay anybody. No. And so, how do we get the shops to understand that? And that's not even at just the independent side, that's the dealer side, that's everywhere. Like, to really get labor rates to where they need to be so we can support this, bringing somebody on and offering them really good benefits and pay.
Well, what do you suggest, sir? How do you pay your WrenchWay bill? What do you suggest for a labor rate?
My suggestion was just going to be, I think Carolyn at ASCCA can just take care of all of this, and then it'll
exactly. Exactly.
It's such a fascinating question to me, and there's a local shop owner here in Wisconsin that I talk to all the time. Just a great guy. Shout out Steve Helwig. And
Steve,
yes, and one of his major passions is that he doesn't want people doing side work because he feels like it cheapens the industry. Because if they have a tech that's going out and charging half of your labor rate, but they're paying in cash, great for the tech, but ultimately the tech is hurting themselves because they're not allowing the shop to be able to take that business on and ultimately raise their labor rate, because if they're just getting undercut constantly, it's really hard to compete with that. So if, his thought, and I think it's so fascinating, is that if you were to switch this around and you're like, okay, everybody's paying this rate and we can increase the rate as a result because we're not getting undercut, then we're able to take care of our technicians better because we can pay them more and offer them more benefits. So I thought it was a fascinating way to think about it. From the side work perspective, there's a lot of techs that do have very lucrative side businesses. And, I think in a lot of cases, shop owners and managers kind of tend to look the other way and maybe not want to address the elephant in the room. But I do think that damages things. I do think there's still, the fact that you have these part stores that make diagnostics seem really easy when they're not, by hooking up a simple scan tool and saying, all right, we'll fix everything, all your problems with this little box. I do think there's, if we're in a boat, we've got a lot of holes in that boat that really
that's a
try
great way
to
of putting it. Yeah.
That don't allow us to charge properly.
Yeah. It's so interesting, we had a guy he came to us from Chicago, so kind of your neck of the woods, and he was very upfront. He said, I want to figure out how to work on hybrids. I'm going to move to California, but I'm not staying. I'm going to move back to the Midwest. And he ended up working for us for a little under a year. Sergio was his name, really great guy. And Sergio could not make it to the shop at 8 a.m. Like he always showed up at 8:10. And the person who was responsible for scheduling Sergio would just get really frustrated with me and just be like, what are we going to do with Sergio? And I'm like literally, it's manna from heaven. Like we're definitely not going to get rid of Sergio. Why don't you just start scheduling him at 8:15? Like stop,
overthinking it. Yeah.
You're blowing against the wind. Like just adjust accordingly. And so you have to pick your battles with technicians, right? I mean, like they're unicorns. I mean, they're such special people.
Yeah.
And so if they want to do side jobs, then, God bless them. One of the things you could ask is, if they're doing side jobs, they're not making enough money at your shop, period.
That's what I keep saying. Like, so that's my one thing.
And I mean, that's just frank. I mean, no one wants to fix more cars on the weekends. They're just doing it because they're trying to feed their kids or, pay off their Snap-on bill or whatever the case may be. So this is, if you're having to fight against whatever they're doing in the weekends, that's on you. But at some point, technicians always going to be technicians. And if somebody is just that, on the flip side, as much as they may be underpaid, as we could say, it's like a broad swath, like, oh yeah, all technicians are underpaid. So the reason that you could also just as easily say, this person's a bulldog and they just insist on this is what they do on a Saturday. They're going to do this for the rest of their lives. And you can't by any means change them. I mean, literally, if you put them on their boat and didn't let them fix cars on a Saturday, they'd keel over and die. Like, we don't want that to happen either.
No. So
whatever you got to do. I mean, to me, this is just having a frank conversation with your employees and making sure that, I mean, I've always said to people, I don't own your weekends. I don't own your evenings, but when you show up, I need your A game. And so I don't want you to be tired. I don't want you to have to do something else. I want you to be able to rest. You should feel like you should rest. Yeah. And then how do you pay someone so they can honestly feel that way? Shop owners are in for a major comeuppance or major reckoning. I mean, I was chatting with a good friend of mine. I won't say who it is, but she was saying how she's been out there for a million years, saying how, oh, this is a great industry and da 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 da, and you should definitely consider this for a career. And she's like, I'm done with it. And I'm sick of like lying through my teeth. Shop owners don't have the balls. They're not standing up. They're not actually looking out for their people. This is actually a shitty industry. There's no upward mobility. People are totally underpaid. We're basically subsidizing auto repair. We're subsidizing car ownership for the entire country on the backs of our employees. And and the idea that we could get there with a carrot instead of a stick, like, oh, we're just going to keep talking about how there's a shortage and it's like, no, I mean, her comment is, shops need to really fall on their face hard. They need to be hurt really badly. Like we need to hit bottom before we actually consider change. And I mean, I certainly feel that way around how we run our businesses. I mean, shops will, in some ways, shops will put customers before their employees. So how they treat their customers is sort of on the Shop-Ware side of house, which is how do you appropriately inform your customers and put them in the driver's seat and make sure that they're being offered their decisions in an unpressurized environment, which, by the way, they love, and then ultimately come back to you over and over again. But anyway, honestly, employees are further down the list. And I think the question is, are we going to get there and make those changes on our own? Or are we
going to be forced
to go out of business a little bit? Are we going to really, really hurt before we realize that we need to raise that gosh darn labor rate to $225 an hour on Prius, people, the cheapest people in the world are paying. I mean, we're going to be over 200. When we get over 200, I don't know. Maybe I'll get a tattoo. I have not a single tattoo on my body. Maybe I'll get my new labor rate and I'll share it with you, Jay. We'll have another podcast.
Well, an exclusive. Yes.
It's a tattoo podcast. That's right.
But I think where I was going with that too is I feel like there's some power in an association when in a group setting you can talk about it and talk candidly about it, and I think that resonates with people across the country, whether you're in San Francisco or in Sacramento, and you're owning a shop in either of those places. Your labor rate's going to be drastically
Yeah.
different,
And
but it's more.
in our world,
Yeah,
like when you talk to folks in California, they're on the other side of that pain. I mean,
yeah.
can you imagine how hard it is to find technicians here? It's
I
impossible.
can. It's brutal. Yes, yes.
Well,
But I,
WrenchWay, which is why you should sign up for WrenchWay and let Jay get in and help you with that problem.
well, I think when I look at it, it's almost we need a united voice, and that's where what an association brings, right? Is a united voice.
Look at
And
you bringing it back. Nice. Good
yeah,
segue.
hey, what? But it is truly like when you have the united voice and you can get people to buy into, hey guys, this isn't a race to the bottom. This is truly showing that we are professionals, that we, are highly educated and well versed in this technology, and being able to paint the visuals to maybe even at the independent shop side where you're painting that visual to a customer so that you can start to get them in the mindset that, hey, this isn't going to get cheaper anytime soon. And I don't know, I just feel like we've almost got to get out ahead of this. We're already so far behind on it that it's incredible, but like getting out and being able to educate customers and teaching shops how to educate customers on why a labor rate is starting to increase or why it's getting more expensive to get your car worked on is so important, because you don't want to just be that shop that's going to go, all right, we're $120 an hour this month, and then next month we're going to be $220 an hour, and then the customer
You
just
should,
freak
though.
out.
You
Yeah.
should, though. Go 220. Just go all the way.
Just go all the way in. Yes, yes. But you know what I'm saying there, right? Like where I think there's going to have to be some level of consumer education on top of shop education, and the shop's education could be, this is why you need to raise your labor rate, and this is why you need to educate the consumers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, everyone's worried about. I mean, again, we're Care Bears. We're there to help people, and yeah, you could make a ton of money fixing cars, but there's way better ways to make money than fixing cars.
100%.
So
We are looking for technicians, service advisors/managers, fixed ops directors, shop owners, and other professionals who want to help improve the industry by becoming a WrenchWay Insider. As a WrenchWay Insider, you can play fun, quick games and win cash prizes by providing anonymous feedback on various industry topics. To become a WrenchWay Insider, download the free WrenchWay app in the App Store or on Google Play. We've included download links in the show notes.
the education of customers, people internalize it way too much. I mean, obviously going from 220 to 120 to 220 is a big jump. And it is emotional, right? Like, gosh, my maintenance service used to be 5 something and now it's 7 something, and 7 something feels a lot higher than 5 something. And, I don't want to be known as being a ripoff, or I want to make sure I'm providing value to my customers. I mean, all that's entirely true. And Aaron Stokes actually does a really good job talking about this, is that ultimately when your back's against the wall and like you're in like a protection mode around your family, you'll do whatever it takes. And so you just need to be able to muster that mentality sooner, so you're not in desperation when you ultimately start protecting your best interest, right? You need to be able to say, like, look, inflation's at 5%. We were talking about this at my shop, which is we have a lot of inventory. We could have a whole podcast about inventory control. And we're like, you know what? We need to raise our parts GP by like 5% because we're selling all this stuff at a huge discount right now because we've bought it, in the last 18 months. So how do you not let the customers dictate your price and let you dictate your price? I mean, business planning, get a good coach, work to the bottom line. There's always that sort of ratchet and wrench cover shot, which is like 20% net or 30% net. And wow, that person's printing money. And I don't think anyone in this business really wants to print money. Like, again, if you want to print money, go into finance.
Right.
Don't fix cars. Why would you fix cars? I mean, it's the biggest pain in the ass. The reason you fix cars is because you care about people and it's interesting, and you care about the business, you care about the employees, etc. But how do you make sure you're protecting your best interests? I do think that a lot of it's in our own minds, like going from realistically 120 to 130. No one's going to know.
No.
We've talked about this. Everyone talks about this a million times. And then the question is, why don't you just do it? Just do it. Bring up the page in Shop-Ware and change the dollar amount. Change that number from whatever it is to $10, $20, $30 more. Than
I feel like in Shop-Ware you should just have like a video pop out of you just screaming at the
shame. Shame. Prius. Carolyn says raise your labor rate. Carolyn says make more money today. You're welcome. Raised your labor rate $10. You didn't have to do anything. You just raised everyone's labor rates $10. Can you imagine?
It would probably do a lot of good for a lot of businesses.
Pitchforks and torches at my house.
I actually feel like you have to make this happen now. Yeah, just
it's done.
Yeah, it's just like a meme of you.
Fuck you! I raised your labor rate. That's right. That's going to be my new motto. You're welcome. I solved your business problems.
Oh my god.
And I just gave $5 of that $10 to WrenchWay. So they
oh my gosh. Oh, and
you're welcome.
We just solved all the world's problems in 5 minutes. It was it was great. Yeah. Which all comes down to raise your labor rates.
Raise your labor rate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really good.
And join
advice.
ASCCA, please. ASCCA.com, please. Please join our association so they can help you stay in business.
Do you think, I mean, when you do get people in a room, just even having a candid conversation like this has to have an impact, doesn't it? I mean, like, if you're pleading with people to say, listen, like this, there's a pretty simple solution to a lot of our problems.
Do you feel like you're pleading with people?
A lot of times, like to get like labor rates in check. Because if you think about it, there's still that 2-bay shop out there that's charging $75 an hour. And it's like, they don't have any of the equipment. It's really tough for them. And a lot of them don't aspire to be anything more than that, right? Like they're in that 2-bay shop or 1-bay shop. And I think that if you can get those people on board too, to say, okay, like if you grow your business, there's benefits all around. I don't know. I do feel like I plead a lot with it because I get passionate about it. And I feel like it's something that for us as an industry to really have the effective change that we want, we've got to get that in order.
Again, it's like, when do people hit bottom? When do they realize that this is a dead end and they can't continue to give away what is otherwise so precious? Yeah.
And I think even like you see, if you see a shop, I know this from my family shop, that some customer put a glowing review out on Facebook and like was sharing it with people, and all kinds of people were loving it and commenting like they're the best. And then there's the one comment that said, "Dan's likes your money." I'm like, what?
Yep.
Like, okay, that's one, probably not the customer you want anyways, but then two, like, who goes out of their way to I don't know. It drives me crazy.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be the trolls. And, whatever. And the internet is such a cancer.
It is.
A lot of people, I'm being particularly candid, so I'll just continue to be particularly candid this morning,
That's what I love about you, Carolyn.
I know, as if I'm not normally candid. But,
yeah, I'm like, is this a new revelation? I don't think so. Yeah.
People, find me online or whatever, raise your labor rate, shame, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what a self-righteous bitch. Like, she's going to be such a pain in the ass. And the reality is that I'm not some woke, whatever, San Francisco individual. It's just that I'm paying $21,000 a month for a 5-day shop. I've already been held essentially at gunpoint to figure out how I'm going to make money.
Right.
I had a general manager who was running my shop. I mean, I haven't been in my business for many years because I'm obviously super busy running a software company, but the person who was running my business several years ago, she came to me and she said, I'm not sure that you can run a repair shop in San Francisco anymore and make money. Like she kind of had like given up which of course, was the beginning of sort of my need to find her replacement.
Yeah.
But, and my comment was like, well, what do you propose? Are we closing business? Like, we're obviously not closing. I'm not closing my repair shop. But the only reason that I'm so outspoken about this stuff is because I've already friggin' lived it, and I'm not, not that I'm super smart or whatever, but like, there's something about the pressure cooker that is San Francisco, both in terms of the cars that we service, but also the economic terms that we're under. That I take my opportunity to hopefully constructively share with others, which is, you're really underselling yourself. And if you're having trouble finding technicians, it's because you're not paying them enough. I mean, this is just pure market, economics. It's like, look, we don't have a technician shortage. We have a pay shortage.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, no one wants to stare at a wall of code and pound on a keyboard all day long. Like, coding sucks.
It does.
But people gravitate in flocks to code because they can make a fortune doing it. They can make $250K a year. If we figure out how to pay our technicians $250K a year, we got no problem.
Won't have a technician shortage anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And it starts with you raising your labor rate. And it's not actually, you worry about hurting your your customers. You worry about your customers' opinions, but if you can literally just turn it around and feed it to your employees, you get that warm and fuzzy right back. So yeah, I mean, I have now for several years, and I have not accomplished this, is figuring out how I can get every single one of my employees on a track to making six figures a year. I mean, if you need to be able to purchase a home and raise a family in San Francisco if you're working at my business. And unfortunately, my shop is already pretty darn efficient. It's going to have to get more efficient to be able to keep its costs low to the customers. And then secondly, we got to show a bunch of value. We got to really showcase why you should bring your car to us and not to somebody else. We're going to do the best possible job on the planet. And some of that is happy employees, but all of it's in service to the employees. Ultimately, the joy is to be able to create a place that's great. I mean, like, even in Shop-Ware land, like, there's so much pressure to try and get engineering resources. It's so hard to hire engineers.
Yes.
Because, COVID and remote work has changed the landscape. And there's so much investment going on inside of that business that there's just a lot of money, and you're competing against those folks. So how do you create an environment that allows you to recruit and ultimately delight those people? I mean, it's everything. Like, I really think that we're moving back into like a worker centric economy. And I love that. I'm so excited to be able to remind ourselves, because we all were there. Even if we're running a business today, we used to be technicians, and remembering how hard that was, and remembering how stressful it was. I mean, flat rate's a whole nother podcast that we could entertain. I mean, we really need to get back to who are the people that actually get this work done, and how do we make sure that they're still going to be there when our car breaks down, right? I mean,
let me ask you this then, like, what is your reservation to raising your labor rate?
Oh no, we're raising it. I mean, the delay for me, honestly, is that I'm already at 180. Our published prices to the world are on our website, so we have to change our website to make sure that our 5,000 mile service and our warning light diagnostic and our catalytic converter theft deterrent service are updated. So we got to make sure that when we do that, we're not saying one thing and then when someone books, they get a $20 surprise, because that's always unwelcome. Yeah. So we've got to do a little bit of just strategizing. But our generalized parts markup was 41%, and our labor rate was 180. I'm sure we'll go to 200. I think we'll just go to 200, and then we'll probably jump that to 45. So our prices are going to jump considerably, and that's just the way it is. I mean, we just have to make sure that our prices in various and sundry places are updated. And I don't feel a need to apologize for it. I mean, no. I again, like, it might be helpful because of our environment being so competitive, like from outside parties like Airbnb that, I don't need to apologize that my rent is so high and that my employees need to live here. That maybe gives me a better cloak of kind of justification. But ultimately, like, I think about at any time when you're thinking about your pricing, you have to look across the competitive landscape. And if there are other people who are doing it just as well as you are and charging less, then, presumably you need to take them out to lunch and say, like, why are you giving away the farm? You need to raise your labor rate too. But also, just being honest about your marketplace. Like, maybe you do need to move. Maybe you do need to upgrade your shop management solution so that you can run more efficiently. Like, whatever it is that's holding you back, like you need to identify. You don't just randomly raise your prices to your customers, but assuming that you do have that competitive advantage, then you should price it. You should understand it. It doesn't have to be this like philosophical, like religious discussion around, are you going to raise your labor rate? Like, figure out if you need to raise your labor rate, figure out how you're going to raise your labor rate, period.
Yeah. And for you, I think transparency helps so much. And even like for your staff to know that, hey, this place costs 21 grand for 5-bay shop.
Oh, well, yeah, sure. Yeah.
And
everybody knows that.
Well, I think
I talk about it on this podcast.
But to me, that's where shops could help themselves a lot, is being more transparent with their staff on what the true costs of running a business are, so that they're not looking at the labor rate at one whatever and then the tech saying, oh, I'm only getting $25 or $30 an hour.
Yeah. Oh, these are weak. This is like flat rate.
Yeah.
People like, oh, well, we need to incentivize our employees. It's like flat rate's just like a weak manager's tool. It's a self-managing function, but it's actually totally unfair and it's demotivating. So I'm not saying, switch off of flat rate, because that would really, set fire to the woods. But
we may actually do an 8-hour podcast today. We joked about that, but
we're just getting started. Now we're talking about labor rates, not labor rates, flat rate. Officially, we just pulled the Band-Aid off and we're going there. And I, you've had so many other people on the podcast, including, earlier ones that I participated on, that were really insightful around this topic. But, whatever, it's not the employee's problem what the car needs. It's not the employee's problem how many cars you got in the shop today. And this idea that I don't pay the employee until the customer picks up the car, so that the money comes into my pocket and then it transfers to your employee's pocket. This is just really bad business. I mean, it's just really, honestly, pathetic business. I mean, your landlord doesn't wait for your customers to pick up cars to get paid for the rent. I mean, and these are the people who ultimately do all of the work. So how do we put on our big boy pants and actually run real businesses? That's the discussion around how are you going to, figure out the financials to be able to make sure that you can take care of people. Those people show up every day and they're in a good mood and they do great work. I mean, that's, and I think, if we were to really drill down, a lot of people got into this business not because, they had amazing, inspirational parents that showed them how it was done. And, they were just such great business owners as technicians that they decided that they were going to go into business and finally do it for themselves. I mean, a lot of people are stretching themselves to try to own a small business in the first place, and they're scared. And so how do you feel like you're worthy of that profitability? How do you feel like you're worthy of charging a higher dollar rate and articulating the honestly, the challenges of your businesses is to your employees? Like, it's way easier to be kind of secretive or discount or, just sort of grin and bear it. I mean, it's really hard. And everybody's on that journey. Everyone's getting there where they can say, you know what, I'm doing something that's really amazing and deserving. I shouldn't feel ashamed that I have to charge $175 an hour, and then I can only pay my employees $40 an hour. Like, you have a conversation around that.
Yeah.
And at some point, if someone wants your job, they can leave and go and run a business themselves. Like, look, there's There's a lot of equipment around here. There's a lot of stuff going on. If you don't want to share your P&L, don't share your P&L. I mean, like that's none of the, at some point, it's not their business. It's literally none of their business. It's not their business. How do you articulate it in a way that says, look, this is how we make money. And this is the arrangement that I've made with you. Good news for you is you don't have to worry about making sure that the check's clear every 2 weeks. That's on me.
Yeah. I do like that approach. I think you hit on something earlier in the podcast that I just feel so strongly about, that, some of these folks aren't, there's key indicators to their satisfaction, right? And if they're doing work on the side, or they're, I've talked to people that have, jobs outside the industry after hours, and it does. I mean, we try to ignore it, but it does come down to money in almost every scenario. And, offering benefits. We had a shop on our program that offered literally zero benefits, none. And we're really frustrated that they couldn't find techs, and we were working with them to try and find techs, and we tried over and over to have conversations with them to say, hey, listen, you've got to do something different here. Like, this isn't not just for us, but for yourself too.
And again, this is like, how do you let them fall? How do you let them hit bottom and say, look, this isn't working, we have to change?
And it's really hard, right? Because you're trying to be candid with them and telling them that, hey, you're frankly just not running a strong business, and who would want to come work for you? Like it's as we've grown the platform, I think that's something we try almost to steer away from is, we don't want bad businesses on the platform, because when somebody finds a job through our platform, we want them to be super happy and enjoy where they're going, and really not feel like they were lied to when they signed up to go work at a shop, right? Like we try to get a shop to really promote transparency, because it's probably one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your life is where you're going to go work. And if you don't know how to do the research on that ahead of time, you don't know what you're signing up for. You're at risk, right? Like like that's something we've seen in the industry as a whole. I talk about it a lot, but people not just leaving from one shop to another, but just leaving the business altogether. Yeah. And that's a huge concern right now. And it's something for me foundationally that I think we have got to get on top of.
Yeah, it's kind of like I can hear like Bill Haas whispering in my ear, just being like, "It's the money, stupid." Yeah, how do we get that across in a way that people can hear and not feel like they're being cornered? I can't raise I can't. How do you say, like, you know what? If you don't want to, that's fine. You're going out of business, though. Yeah. If you're ready to change, then, and there's so many inspirational shops that are doing it. Not necessarily being one, honestly. Like we do some things well, but I'm deeply inspired by my friends and other folks I'm seeing in the business that are literally just paving the way. I mean, their shops are gorgeous. Yeah. And that's where we're going to be. Those are the shops that are going to be in business.
Well, and that's, kind of even bringing it back to the association level, that was something that I saw a huge opportunity with, is, being able to get everybody on the same page, letting them understand, that there are some things fundamentally as an industry that we've got to change. Like we've got to be better at.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like, so ASCCA business is like, okay, you got to have a business first, and then you got to join an association, right? And, we have two objectives this year. One is membership health and one is chapter health. And the reality is that they're hand in hand. That's why it's so hard, is that we either focus on membership or we're not focused on chapters, or we're focused on chapters, not focused on members, et cetera. And, there's dwindling volunteer resources. There's just, there's turnover. We're going through a phase where we need to really convert the association and move into the next level. And I honestly feel that everyone's ready for it. Like when we talk, like, we have a Google group, and I'm, writing letters to the group, and was super jazzed and really excited. And we have some really phenomenal people that are part of the association. But that's the exact point, which is the people who are participating at our level at this point are those folks who have like largely figured it out. I mean, they're really the best of the best. And so we have one person, again, won't name names, but he's like, you know what, screw it. You know, if we'll just continue to charge whatever we need to charge for our dues, and if we're left with like 5 members at the end of the day, but we still are sitting on, you know, a pretty good, you know, investment portfolio, and we can keep the association going, like, so be it. Like we should maintain the standard. And it's like, yeah, no one here is interested in having like a five shop association. So it's not about, you know, how do we give the best automotive professionals, you know, how do we unite the best automotive service professionals and give them voice? It's how do we unite service professionals, all of them, and give them voice?
Well, and lift the bottom up. Yeah.
Right. And that's discussion around, you know, who else is out there that's not currently participating. And there's a ton of people who, you know, once they get involved with an association, they're suddenly, they wake up and they start to, you know, understand some of the things that we're talking about here. And I will say that I rankle against this idea that, like, oh, you know, we're sitting here on a podcast and we're so smart, and, you know, you should do this and that, and like, oh, you know, you should join an association. And there's a lot of that kind of like, we're talking to ourselves, preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Among like the trade show group and the podcast group and so on and so forth. So I'm not speaking down to the folks that are not currently participating at all. And if anything, I would say the reason that a lot of those people aren't participating now is they haven't seen value, which is why I'm super bullish around making the barrier to entry super low, which is like, look, we don't need to discuss like, you know, what has the association done for you? Realistically, we're in Sacramento, we're representing your best interest. That's the core reason that you would participate in the first place, and all the rest of it's bonus. And if you want to get more deeply involved and meet other people and gain inspiration and some ideas, that's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, I do think that, you know, we're going to have to just kind of like continue to ride this thing and see where people wind up.
Yeah, and that's really cool. I mean, the candidness is always great, and I think from the association side, you're silly not to participate in it. And if those California listeners right now, like I truly feel really strongly about this, about getting involved. And even the folks that aren't in California, find some association.
You can also join. You can join. Anyone can sign up.
So everybody should join ASCCA.
That's right.
Yes. All right.
ASCCA.com. Sign up. There's a form there. Click the button. Just put your name in.
Just do it. Just do it.
Just do it. Do it now.
but in reality, it's anytime you can, I guess, surround yourself with like-minded people and try to, you know, you're all thinking the same thing. You're all trying to fight the same battles. And if you can do it collectively, there's just a lot more power behind it. I mean, it's simple, really.
Well, you know, Sacramento and Washington aren't going to do anything unless they see voters behind it. They're all motivated by voters, and that's why you got to put your name on the list. And you know, ASCCA, phenomenal people. I mean, incredible people to meet, and so I'm just so grateful to have met them and that they exist, and they've created such an amazing thing in California. And I'm super grateful to have an opportunity to share it with you, Jay. So thanks for asking me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming back to the show. Now recurring guest, and you know,
the Candid Hour.
Yeah,
Does someone need an F-bomb?
Actually, I think in the podcast room we'll have to just do a wall of fame. I think you'd be squarely on the wall of fame. So. No, in all seriousness, appreciate what you're doing from both the Shop-Ware side and the industry in general. I mean,
thank you for what you're doing, Jay. Thanks for solving the problem around technician recruiting and obviously having some difficult conversations with people.
Yeah, yeah. We've got a lot of really talented people in this industry, and I think being able to get them together for the greater good of the industry is what it's all about. So. Thanks again. Hopefully we'll get you back on as a, you know, now just recurring all the time.
Labor rate.
Labor rate. Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Carolyn. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. Always a pleasure.